Welcome into the penultimate in-season edition of New Track Record. Caleb Hatch, Justin Kinney with you. We are now approaching mid-September. The final race weekend of the season is upon us. The penultimate race of the season at Portland, the BitNile.com Grand Prix of Portland just wrapped up. We'll recap that this episode, plus some silly season news, announcements to come, rumors, and more, plus a little bit of schedule news for 2024 as well. We'll get to all that this week. Hi, Justin.
Hello. How are we doing?
Doing all right. And, you know, this is the first time in a long time, there was a race over the weekend, but I honestly don't have a whole lot to take away as far as the on-track action.
Was there on-track action?
I mean, there was if you're race control.
Did something happen?
Yeah, we'll dive into race control. I mentioned some silly season announcements, a couple of driver confirmations, some to come that we're expecting, and then schedule news as well all this week, plus a preview of the season finale race, the Firestone Grand Prix of Monterey at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, where IndyCar has held a test today as we record on Thursday, September the 7th. Practice qualifying race weekend upcoming with the season finale coming up on Sunday. So let's kick things off. The word of the episode is penultimate. It's just a fun word to use.
Penultimate, it is.
It's a fun word to use. And the winner of the penultimate race in the IndyCar season was Alex Palou. So Alex Palou gets the win and gets the championship. 5th race win of the season. I mean, it's just been a dominating performance by him all year. I think it's fitting that he's able to get a race win and clinch the championship the same week. It's always so awkward, right? At the final race when they have the race winner and then also the champion and the back and forth.
And
it was nice
really
to
cares.
have everything tied together in a neat little bow.
Nobody really cares about the race winner.
No.
It's kind of, that's great, but get out of the way. We have to give the Astor Cup to somebody. So it was nice that Alex Palou wrapped it up while also winning the race.
So he gets the win again, 5th on the season. Just a dominant performance by him. Yet to finish outside the top 8 this year still. Iowa won, and St. Pete, the opening race of the year, his worst finishes. And those are both 8th place finishes on the season. So just continuing his dominance. Scott Dixon with a podium. Felix Rosenqvist, as he nears his swan song at McLaren, gets on the podium as well, finishing in 2nd. So a good result for him over the weekend. Let's start with our 3 things. I guess, first off, I'll start with Alex Palou. This one's pretty obvious, right? He gets the race win, wins the championship. Maybe not so much what he did on Sunday, but what he was able to do since the end of last season at Laguna Seca, getting that race win, seemed to get his confidence back. He hadn't won a race last year, coming off a championship year in 2021. But then more importantly, what he did this year, that stretch between the Indy GP and Mid-Ohio, where he won 3 of the 4 races, won 2 poles. If not, for getting taken out by Rinus VeeKay in the pits in the Indy 500, could have realistically won 5 straight races. I mean, he was that good. And for him to do all that and then have everything crazy that happened with his contract, well, again, he brought upon himself, let's not kid ourselves, as far as getting out of the McLaren deal and still performing on track and not really missing a beat. Last year, it felt like he missed a beat with everything going on behind the scenes after the McLaren announcement last summer. And then this year, when the roles get reversed, he seemed to not miss anything. And I think I was just most impressed that he was able to do what he did this year and just the consistency. Last year, Will Power, remember, only won 1 race, but won the championship because of his consistency. Well, this year is the same with Alex Palou as far as being consistent, eliminating those non-top 10 finishes, and to have none and have one of the best average finishing positions in IndyCar history. I mean, it's quite impressive what he pulled off.
Absolutely a dominant performance by Alex Palou all season. His 5 wins. He joins Dario Franchitti in 2009, 5 wins in his championship season. Sam Hornish Jr. in 2002, and Johnny Parsons way back in 1949. Do you know the record for wins in a season for a champion?
I'm going to go AJ Foyt.
That is one of 2.
And Al Unser.
You are Smart fella.
Really? Okay. I knew it was Al or Bobby for the other. So AJ, didn't he win like 13 of 15 races in 65, 63?
The record, at least for a sanctioned IndyCar season, is 10 by AJ Foyt in 64. Now, he may have won more races, but were they sanctioned races in the series? And then Al Unser in 1970. Mario Andretti with 9 in 1969. And, of course, winning
what do you by any chance have the kart record in front of you?
I do not have the kart record. I do not. No, this is IndyCar, so I do not.
Okay. I was just curious.
I'm just trying to see if they have kart records in here because they have Sebastian Bourdais in here in 2004 and 2006 when he won 7 for kart. I think the kart record. Here you go. It is on here.
Michael Andretti won 8 in 90. Yeah, yes. You know what? I literally typed in 91 kart, went to the Wikipedia page because my first guess was Michael in 91. He was dominant that year in kart.
Now he is tied with Al Jr. in 1994, who also won 8 races in kart that season, winning the championship.
So again, a really good season for Alex Palou.
So it puts things in perspective. Like what we look at is as a complete dominant season by Alex Palou still pales in comparison to some of the most dominant seasons ever in the sport. But that's not taking anything away from what Alex Palou has been able to do.
And in this spec chassis era, it's impressive because, yes, the shocks can be different and a few other modifications, but the cars are the same. Like back in kart, you could have the dominant chassis and or engine, and you were rolling. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
So that was a huge advantage. Also a huge disadvantage, though, if you didn't have the right setup between those things. And now, I mean, the cars are the same. The engines are Chevy or Honda. I mean, back then you had 3, 4, 5 engine manufacturers. So it was even, if you had a dominant car, it was like you were Max Verstappen. If you didn't, it was like you're driving an Alpha Tauri or a Haas out there, if you will. But so anyway, Alex Palou, though, for IndyCar purposes, a very dominant season in the sport. What's your first takeaway?
My first takeaway, I don't want to start with the negative, so let's find some positives. I was overly impressed once again with Graham Rahal. Didn't turn out the way he wanted it to, but he starts up front. He looked like he had a really, really good car, but it just didn't work out with him finishing 12th. I think something that we don't appreciate that Team Ganassi is able to do so well is not only do they know when to pit their drivers or when not to pit, but they know to be able to look at the timing and scoring and know where their driver is going to come out and if they're going to come out in traffic or not, because that's what burned Graham Rahal was when he pitted, and this is on his team, he kept coming out in traffic. And I think something we don't respect enough for what Ganassi is able to do is they're able to bring in Dixon and Palou when they know they're going to be able to come out in reasonably clear traffic more often than not. And that's, I think, what really decided this race is the pit stops that Ganassi was able to put together with its drivers allowed them to get fresh tires on, hit the track, and really put down some burners in clear traffic. Meanwhile, Graham Rahal was unable to do that.
And to put this in perspective, so Trackside Online with this stat, only 3 IndyCar race winners have started from the pole so far this season, and no winners have started from the outside of the front row. Average starting spot, the 16 race winners, 6.0.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I'm here for it, definitely. But that's what I'm going to go with my first point. Graham Rahal, good job showing flashes that, quite frankly, I didn't think he had anymore. And you hope that it continues into next season and he can get a win and Rahal, Letterman, and Lanigan continue to grow. But it was another impressive weekend. Now, they're completely lost on ovals, but how they've been able to turn their road and street course program around has been nothing short of very impressive. What's your number 2?
My number 2, so I kind of want to go add on to what you said about strategy and Ganassi. They're on a different level compared to other teams. Even Penske, for example. I mean, the fact that it wasn't just Graham Rahal, but also Scott McLaughlin, who started second, who seemingly they were just running the race the first stint. They pit once, and both of them just caught up with lap cars and were never really a factor again. I mean, they got in the fringes of the top 10, the latter group of the top 10 at some points, but it just never really worked out. And I get it. Lap cars are a problem at any race. It is what it is. But
they're a problem if you allow them to be the problem.
Yes. If you have a good enough car, you should be able to drive your way through that.
Good enough strategy to pit when you can come out and not be around a lot of people.
Yes. And I just think the fact that they did what they did. I mean, Palou, 3.5 average finish in his last 17 races. Dixon, 4.2 in his last 13 races. That from Chad 200. And Ganassi's won 9 of the last 17 races. I mean, it's just been dominant for this team for so long, and especially those two cars. And I think what we're seeing here on the strategy side is just they continue to get it right when other teams get it wrong. And in a normal race, the top teams have the ability to separate themselves, and Ganassi does it seemingly every race weekend with strategy. I mean, they've done it now 3 straight weekends in different ways. I mean, they weren't dominant cars this weekend in qualifying or anything. I mean, yeah, Dixon started 4th and Palou started 5th, but it's not like they just missed out on the pole or something here. I just think they continue to nail the strategy when other teams get it wrong.
They continue to be the team that gets it right and nobody else does consistently. And we've said it on this podcast before that the underappreciated biggest offseason move in IndyCar was Taylor Kyle going from McLaren to Ganassi. Look at the season that Ganassi has had and Alex Palou, and look at the season that McLaren has had, and tell me that Taylor Kyle hasn't been a huge impact for both teams in going in either direction. And when you have Mike Hall's the established guy there, you have so many smart people behind the scenes or outside of the cockpit at Ganassi. I think to a certain extent, it allows Chip Ganassi to say, yeah, I'm going to find drivers, but I'm not going to pay top billing for some of these guys. I'm going to let Marcus Ericsson walk. Why? Because I have the people behind the scenes that are going to be able to put whoever is in the cockpit in the best possible position. And that's been proven throughout this season once again.
Yeah, it's putting people in the right spots. And, Ericsson left, going to Andretti for next year, obviously going to get paid a lot more. And I'm sure he's happy about that. But I'll be curious if it's the same consistency when it comes to strategy and how they go about things. Yes, on one hand, a driver going from Ganassi to Andretti, maybe you can carry over some of that and maybe change the culture a little bit on how things are done to, get back to being a not only race winning team, because they've been that,
yeah,
but a championship contending team.
It's going to take a considerable amount of effort.
Yes.
Just very impressive with Ganassi's been able to do all around. I mean, it's a team that even I have said at times that Scott Dixon was on the downswing and, oh my gosh, they who's the heir apparent and where are they going to be? Well, Alex Palou is obviously the heir apparent. And as long as another issue doesn't arise, never know with Alex Palou, he's set for the next couple of years, at least at Ganassi. It's a very impressive overall. He just needs to get that first oval win, which you feel probably coming next year. You had to bet?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would say next year for sure. It seems like a matter of time.
As you mentioned before we started recording, it's not like he's been terrible on ovals. He's been respectable and been in competition, runner-up at Indy. And a 4th as well, the 500. So
yeah,
he's not been a clown on ovals by any means, but that win so far has eluded him.
And, as far as the tire designations, I mean, you go back to what happened in this race, and it always comes down to, getting the tire choices right. And Graham Rahal, Scott McLaughlin, and Colton Herta, who we'll get more on him in a bit, started on the alternate. Dixon, Palou started on the primary. clearly that was the right strategy call. It's just the reality of getting it right and getting it wrong. I mean, you would think getting rid of the alternate tires first and going primary the rest of the way would work, but when you get caught in lap traffic, it definitely backs you up.
Yes, absolutely does. And that's the beauty of what Ganassi has been able to do, is allow their drivers to come out not in traffic, to then lay down some big laps. And they were able to do that at Portland.
What's your number 2?
Let's talk about Portland and the race. You think about the Pacific Northwest, you think about Portland, and it's a laid back, sleepy town, and not a lot of excitement around Portland. You just go there to relax and chill, and it's away from the hustle and bustle. I felt like that was the equivalent of the race. Didn't you? Even from the outset, the broadcast, the pre-race ceremony just felt like it was just there.
It's a track that I will say this. So I caught some of the Formula E race that they had there. I don't normally watch that series, but I just wanted to see what it would look like. And it felt cleaned up and it felt presentable. And I get it. Part of it was more in the middle of summer. So it's going to be a lot greener than it is, in September. But the track looked cleaner. It just looked more presentable. And for this event, it did not. Let alone the fact that the crowd was... I mean, it was way less than Formula E. I can say that.
Well, and I was going to say, for somebody like you that tuned in and saw the crowd of Formula E and the excitement it seemingly had, it being significantly more in both respects than IndyCar.
And the Formula E racing on the track was great. I must admit, I watched some of the race and I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. I mean, I don't like the way the cars sound. It's kind of hilarious. They sound like, like your remote control car with the little engine, like it just, cars. Yeah, it sounds silly. But the racing was pretty good. For IndyCar at this track, I mean, either get rid of the turn 1 chicane and just let him go for it.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's no crash in turn 1 in the opening lap, like I get that people roll their eyes, but also
nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened in this race.
Nothing.
It was 110 laps of nothing.
You had
nothingness.
Willpower save a spin. You had Agustin Canapino spin.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. Like that's all we had happen.
And
here.
It just felt like from the jump, there was no excitement I felt in the broadcast. There's no flyover because, I love to judge the flyovers. Yeah. There was just no energy whatsoever in this race. And for people clamoring that IndyCar had to be in the Pacific Northwest, an untapped resource, untapped region, blah, blah, blah. I look at it and it's like, where's the energy and excitement that people claimed was there for IndyCar? But it's interesting. They seem to have that energy and excitement for Formula E at Portland. So why isn't it IndyCar? I don't know. It just, unfortunately, you're ending the season with a boring race in Portland and, quite frankly, a boring race at Laguna Seca. The talking points this week are all going to be about breaking the track record. I don't care about breaking the track record if the racing is still boring. Okay, so the cars are going 3 or 4 seconds a lap faster, but there's still no passing going on.
Well, and ultimately, if you're just going faster and no one's passing, does it really matter?
No, not at all. Just like if you were going 10 mile an hour and there's no passing, it's still no passing. So I feel like there's a lot of hype around this track record thing. Like even Matt, like this is an Indy we're talking about. What do I care if there's track records at Laguna Seca if the racing is still terrible and boring? And that's coming back to next year, taking the step to put Nashville at the end of the season. And people are going to, you can't put an unpredictable race and Crashville and stuff at the end of the season. Yeah, you can, because it would add some semblance of excitement to the end of season schedule.
And, I mean, Nashville was fairly predictable this year compared to what we saw in years 1 and 2 of that event. Here's the thing. The drivers want a predictable race like Laguna Seca because it's safe and easy. If you qualify well, you're probably going to finish well. But fans deserve, a true marquee event to wrap up the season, and Nashville definitely fits that bill. Now, ideally, in a perfect world, it's on an oval track and it's a 400 or 500 mile race, and on a big oval, whether it's Michigan or whether it is, rest in peace, Fontana. I mean, Homestead, Miami. I mean, somewhere, right? I mean, can you imagine Michigan on Labor Day weekend
Right?
Like say on the either the Sunday night or Sunday afternoon. I mean, that'd be great.
That'd be amazing. You look at what NASCAR does, the final race before the playoff, and whether you have issues and like the playoff or not, that's irrelevant. But the final race before the playoff is Daytona, where anything can happen. And chaos, positive, negative. A driver comes out of nowhere, wins the race, and qualifies for the playoff. It is unpredictability at Daytona going into the playoff. And you know what? The drivers don't like it, but they're not vocal about it, really. Because everybody knows it's the best thing for the show. It's the best thing for the sport, and it's the best thing to put butts in the seats. Is this event is the culminating event of your regular season before you go into the playoffs. Meanwhile, IndyCar is sleepwalking through the final portion of its schedule with Portland and Laguna Seca. And then now people are going to want to be salty about Nashville taking that spot next year. No, it's giving an infusion of energy into the end of the season that, quite frankly, I don't think IndyCar has. I mentioned it to you before we started recording, is like, are we the exception when you look at once football starts combined with the lack of excitement in the final couple races for IndyCar, that we're just kind of like, season's over, get it over with. We're watching football. Are we in the minority, or do you think a fair amount of IndyCar fans like us are like that? I mean, we're as big of IndyCar fans as anybody. We got a weekly podcast, and even we are like, Laguna Seca, Portland, whatever. Football's on.
Yeah, and I think part of it is when you get away from your core Midwest fan base, that also hurts. Moving to Nashville to wrap up the season will help a lot because it'll be a lot more accessible to your core Midwest fan base.
I agree. At the same time, for those, and I really believe this is a vocal minority, I really do, the people that want the season to go longer, like, I cannot see it. I have a hard time caring over the final couple weeks of the season for IndyCar. I can't imagine if it went another month. I really couldn't.
I mean, I know I say I want early October, a race at either Fontana or Michigan to wrap up the season.
But no, you don't.
I say I want that. But I also think having a race in the Midwest or having an oval to wrap it up would also help with the excitement. I really do think that would help.
I think it wouldn't hurt.
And Nashville being Midwest adjacent, as we like to say,
it is
definitely
in the South.
helps.
I have been corrected about that. It is in the South. But I agree. The fact that you're ending the year with two, arguably your two most boring races and race courses, is just not a good look, particularly when once you get into football season, you're fighting for eyeballs more so than any time the rest of the season. What are we at? Your number 3?
My number 3. All right. It's time. The biggest takeaway I had from this race, unfortunately,
race control.
So you have Alex Palou make not one move, but 2 moves. No penalty.
It's not allowed.
Was it Kirkwood who got a blocking penalty? Yeah, who did much less. Then you have Kirkwood getting, another penalty for failure to follow direction of any car for blocking, so he had to yield another position. Then you had the ridiculous call to let Felix Rosenqvist continue around while Agustin Canapino had spun, was stalled in a dangerous area on track. We kept it green and just kept going until Rosenqvist could pit. Like, at some point, can we just go yellow right away every time? Like, I don't understand this letting either leave the pits open, right? Leave the pits open and don't close the pits every time, or stop pulling this nonsense with holding yellows.
Don't make it more difficult than it should be. It feels like the immediate reaction to race control when there's an incident is, do we keep it green? Or for how long do we keep it green? If there's an incident on track, put the race under yellow. And you know what? If that screws over somebody, that's racing. It's been racing since the inception of the sport. That's racing. Instead of, let's keep it open. Because one of these days, it's going to be the wrong decision, Caleb, and it could be a catastrophic decision.
I honestly keep waiting for that. Like, I don't understand. If safety is paramount, then why are you allowing this to happen? I'm so frustrated that we can all watch a race broadcast, and not only did did the announcing team look at that? Oh, is that under review? No, the Palou thing wasn't even under review.
Yeah.
Like, how is that not under review? Like, are we watching the same races here? Like, I don't understand.
There's no
anymore.
rhime or reason to it
Because
whatsoever.
anytime I think something's a penalty, it's not. And anytime I think something is not a penalty, it is. It doesn't make any sense. And can we just get some new faces in race control? Because it seems like they've completely lost the trust of the paddock. In fact, it doesn't seem like it. They have.
They
absolutely have because of the calls or non-calls all season long.
It's almost like they're reactionary to the reactions of penalties or non-penalties. It's like, okay, people were outraged because this was a penalty. Next time around, we're not going to call it. Or this was a non-penalty and a team was mad. Okay, next time we're going to call it. Instead of actually consistently being, if you do this, this is the penalty. If you do that, this is a penalty. Say what you want about Formula One. There are pretty cut. Now they screw up too, race control for sure. They're pretty cut and dry rules. Is if you react, it's probably a 5 or 10 second penalty, or you're going to have to give a position back. Like, it's pretty standard. Like, and there's no real questions around there. But IndyCar, you have no idea what's going to be called. You could have somebody disqualified from a race. We've seen that this year where you're like, wait,
yeah,
what?
Yeah.
I mean, you're like from no penalties to people being disqualified from races. Like, it makes no sense. And once again, I come back to it's just a reactionary group of folks that, well, this was the reaction for this previous call, so we're going to do this this time, instead of just being consistent. And don't worry about the reactions of drivers and teams and owners. If it's a rule and they break the rule, have a set infraction penalty for that rule. It's not hard, but seemingly in IndyCar it is.
I will give them this. At least they're consistent in our viewed inconsistencies of their calls or lack thereof.
They're consistently inconsistent.
Yes. I'm just beyond. Like, I don't even understand what's going on, because between the yellow being delayed for 45 seconds for Felix to pit.
Stop doing
that. And then
that.
Palou moving not once but twice in reaction to another driver on track and not getting a penalty. I give up.
If you're going to try to be cute and keep it open, you need to adopt a virtual safety car or some sort of intermediary like Formula One has, because it's very dangerous. At some point, it's going to be ruinous for somebody. And I'm talking safety. I'm not talking about the race. I'm talking about the safety of a driver. And just being cute, no, we're just going to keep trying to keep the pits open and blah, blah, blah. Once again, because they're afraid to experience the wrath of a driver or a team or an owner because the yellow flag came out and it ruined their race. Quit worrying about the thoughts of teams and drivers. Just judge the series as you should. Don't worry about it. But I think they are so affected by public opinion or paddock opinion that they have no rhyme or reason and no consistency to what they call. And I think that is too. I think because that's one of the things in IndyCar. It's a tight-knit community, blah, blah, blah. A lot of these race directors know the driver. They're former drivers. They're friends with owners. They raced with these guys. Like, they're too attached to the paddock to really be who they should be. They should be complete people that have no contacts in the paddock and just come in and judge the race as it should be raced. Until that happens, you're going to have inconsistency.
It's just hard for me to comprehend what's going on, because the calls and lack thereof make absolutely no sense. And it leaves me more confused. And there was a stretch where we weren't talking about race control constantly, and now we've just come back to that again, and it's a talking point every weekend because of some call or non-call. I think that's a problem.
I think what you're looking at is the fact that the race control tries not to be part of the outcome of races, and by doing that, they are affecting the outcome of races.
Alex Palou deserved a penalty for the move.
But they want to be, they're like, oh, we don't want to impact the title chase or punish somebody that's in a title chase or leading the race or whatever. They have to take that out of it. A penalty is a penalty is a penalty. Doesn't matter who does it, when they do it, where they're at in the standings, where they're at in the race. A penalty is a penalty is a penalty, period.
All right, what's your number 3?
Let's talk Yuri Vips a little bit because I think he slipped under the radar. And I was a defender of Vips last week about a guy that screwed up. It's a major screw up, but he got another chance. And I thought he performed admirably. He was not a talking point for all the good reasons coming out of the weekend.
Yeah, he started 18th. He finished 18th. I mean, he was one lap down. So finishing the race,
leading
rookie in the race. He beat Marcus Armstrong by 1 position. Completed all but 1 lap. Also a huge positive because getting laps in the car. And most importantly, I mean, that car is very much in the leader circle, race at the end of the season. And he's protected that car as far as the leader circle standings on where things stand for getting that money for 2024. And that's the biggest aspect. You come out of Portland and you're not losing ground. In fact, you're staying pretty steady. You look at where things are at. The ECR number 20 is in 20th, 179 points. In 21st, the Ray Hall 30 car with 172. And then the car in the cut line is the number 29 for Andretti Steinbrenner at 169. Then the Meyershank 60 at 166. And then the Juncos Hollinger 78 at 164 and 24. Those are the cars in contention. And for a rookie to come in, and I will say, I was very surprised that Team Ray Hall went with a rookie making his first IndyCar start and then also his second IndyCar start to close out the season when that car's in a leader circle battle, right?
Right.
I mean, that's a bit of a risk. Let's not kid ourselves. And for them to do what they've done is very impressive. And I think it just goes to show you he's a talented driver. Now, as far as what does this mean for the future? I mean, he is one of the drivers competing for a full-time slot at Ray Hall next year. So that's where things stand, and I think it's a good element. And with the championship decided, it was nice to see the broadcast even talk about the leader circle. Now, what's so confusing is the 11 car for Ganassi that shared between Sato and Marcus Armstrong this year, not eligible. So you have to take that into account and move everyone up a spot, and that's a factor in all of this. So again, the 29 at number 22, the final spot. The 30 at 21 with a 7-point advantage. And then 3 points back is the number 60 at Shank. So, again, Yuri Vips showed himself quite well.
He did. Like you said, leading rookie. He finished higher than Will Power. Finished higher than Alexander Rossi. And I thought for a guy that, for all intents and purposes, is trying to prove himself as a dude that deserves more seat time heading into next season in whatever role that is, through one race, I think performed pretty admirably. That's our 3 things, right?
Yes,
we're through our
that is our 3 things. And just another note on the Ray Hall team, Nathan Brown had this. So Graham had 2 poles in a season for the first time since 2009. And then also gives Ray Hall 4 poles on the year as a team. That's the total number they logged as a team from 2008 to 2022.
And a lot of that has been backloaded.
Yes.
This is not.
Yeah, this is, I mean, the
first 500, basically.
Yeah, the only exception is the first IMS road course race, right? That Lundgaard had the pole for. Didn't end up winning, but had the pole for that first edition. But yes, I mean, he won a second pole. He won the pole in the race at Toronto. Graham obviously won the second Indy GP pole. And then at Portland. So, and then Lundgaard also won. So he won the pole at Toronto. So that covers it. And I just think overall, it's very impressive that the second half of the season outside of the Indy GP, where they had some success, this was a team that largely completely turned it around in qualifying and in racing.
Yeah, it's been a great performance over the final 3 months of the season or so for Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan Racing, considering where they were in May.
All right, TV rating time. So TV ratings were down slightly, 953,000 viewers. That was down from 979,000 viewers from last year at Portland. I mean, that's
holiday weekend.
Yeah, holiday weekend.
I know there was there was direct college football.
Yeah, there's college football on.
There was
not a good game. It was Oregon State and San Jose State.
Yeah. So there was football, but not good football. I mean, we always say 1 million is the benchmark, but once we get to the end of the season, I kind of throw that those expectations out.
Yeah, I mean, Laguna Seca. I mean, if you can get...
What would you get, 700,000 if you can get that?
I was going to say, if you can get 750,000, I consider that a massive win.
That's like $3 million for every other race.
Yeah.
In week
just
one.
Because of going against week one of the NFL season here in the U.S.
And people really realistically actually want the series to go deeper. And even one weekend against the NFL is like, ugh. Could you imagine 3, 4, 5 weekends? No thanks.
Yeah, that's tough. Another notes from over the weekend. Congrats to Miles Rowe, who won the USF Pro 2000 title. He will advance to the series formerly known as Indy Lights in 2024.
HMD?
Yes, with HMD. So
got some love from Lewis Hamilton.
Yes, which
on
is
the socials.
Very, very exciting. Great for him. I mean, he's a guy who Penske basically saw the talent, gave him the opportunity, and now he's potentially an Indy 500 participant in 2025.
Man, that's a lot. I don't expect Miles Rowe to go in next year and win Indy Lights. I think it's going to be a 2-year grooming process for him. I expect to see him in IndyCar in 2026. Man, I'm getting old. 2026. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
This is getting ridiculous. Didn't we just jump into the year? Wasn't it Y2K yesterday?
It feels like it.
Now we're going to be a quarter of the way through a freaking century. Man, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things would have to go right next year for him to be in IndyCar in 2025, but we'll see.
Meanwhile, Simon Sykes wins USF 2000. He'll move up to USF Pro 2000, so congrats to him moving up on the ladder. I mean, can we still call it the Road to Indy ladder? I mean, it's not the same, like it doesn't have that official name anymore.
It technically is, though. It's the Road to IndyCar, but could you say that it's the ladder system, blah, blah, blah. It technically is a clear-cut path. It's just not under the same umbrella, I guess.
Yeah,
it serves the purpose.
It does.
Still.
It does. All right, so that wraps up recap of Portland. Let's get into silly season. So Alex Palou won the championship. Chip Ganassi all but confirmed that Palou is back with Ganassi. No surprise there. Also, Marcus Armstrong confirmed for 2024 onward in a multi-year deal with Ganassi. Felix Rosenqvist confirmed at Meyer Shank, the 06 car to replace Elio as far as full-time status with that team. So it'll be Felix Rosenqvist and Tom Blomqvist. Simon Pagenaud obviously out. He still continues his recovery. I mean, it's an unfortunate situation with all that. It's understandable them making a move. It's not like Simon had set the world on fire before then. But the whole thing is unfortunate with that. Hopefully Simon finds a home. He said he's focused on recuperating and getting his health back to 100%, and that's obviously going to be the primary focus.
I believe for Simon Pagenaud, you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, you have to judge him by what he did or did not do up to his injury, and he did not perform. But I think this is going to be a good injection of a change in approach and scenery at MSR. I just, you look at this season, it can't get any worse, can it?
No.
At this point?
It was a very tough year.
Yes. So,
I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's putting it nicely, I think. And I think Shank would probably say the same thing.
Meanwhile, so Marcus Armstrong, who can clinch Rookie of the Year for this year despite not running the ovals, the battle between him and Augustine Canapino, and all signs point to Armstrong being able to hang on. I mean, he's got a 26-point advantage going into Laguna Seca, but he will test at Texas Motor Speedway next week for his first oval test. So that is set. So those are some of the confirmations. We expect David Malukas to be confirmed at McLaren on Friday, September 8th, to complete their 3-car lineup. So there's another confirmation. We also got confirmation over the weekend at Portland that Romain Grosjean will not be back with Andretti in 2024. Not a huge surprise. We had heard reports about that, but official confirmation coming over the race weekend. Where could he go? Dale Coyne Racing is perhaps the favorite if he goes to a team. There are apparently 3 teams interested in Grosjean. So it could be one of those 3 teams, or it could be nothing.
I mean, I don't think the question to be asked of that is which teams are interested in Romain Grosjean. I think the question is which teams is Romain Grosjean interested in. Could you imagine for how sour he has been at times with Andretti, how that's going to work if he's at Coyne and you're just a back marker? I don't see that ending well at all, or even going well during it. I really think if I had to bet right now, Romain Grosjean is done at the end of the season in terms of being a full-time driver. I just don't see, for him, what's the enjoyment of going to a lesser team? He wasn't even enjoying himself at Andretti.
Yeah, and in a season that started out with so much promise, I mean, battling for the race win at St. Pete, a couple of poles, I mean, it just completely tanked. Really, you go back to the Indy 500, and he currently, somehow he's 13th in points, and that helps with the back-to-back second-place finishes he had at Long Beach and Barber. And then obviously at St. Pete competing for a race win, but then 30th in Indy, and he's only had one top 10 finish since that second place at Barber, and that was a 6th at Nashville. It's just been a tough year.
When you look at McLaren, and you mentioned Felix out, David Malukas in, is there any excitement there whatsoever? Do you look at that when you say, okay, McLaren has to get better, and their major driver move is Felix out, Malukas in? That, to me, doesn't change the expectations of that team one iota.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
Doesn't resonate.
Malukas is a really good oval driver. He's an above average road and street course driver, but I mean, he'll have better equipment, obviously, and it will be different going from a Honda entry to a Chevy entry. Don't get me wrong. But beyond that, I don't know. I
just feel like shouldn't McLaren be above taking flyers on drivers that may or may not work out? Doesn't McLaren want to be like Penske, where you're hiring established, proven drivers, not a driver that may work out that brings some money? Just kind of feels like that's the play here with McLaren. McLaren must see something in David Malukas that I haven't seen. Malukas is a competent race car driver. Do I look at him as, yeah, he really ups the chances of McLaren competing for a title next year or competing for more wins next year? Doesn't check either one of those boxes. Could be wrong, but at least right now, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, who do you have higher expectations for next year? Between Linus Lundqvist, who's at Ganassi, Marcus Armstrong at Ganassi, and David Malukas. And I get it. Malukas will be the more experienced driver compared to the other two.
Right.
But wouldn't you take Lundqvist and or Armstrong over Malukas?
I would definitely take Lundqvist over him.
Malukas is a guy who could challenge for a win on an oval, but beyond that, I'd have to see a lot of improvement. And we've seen some of that in qualifying for road and street course races this year. But there's got to be a lot of improvement for me to feel like he could be a guy challenging for wins. And again, he's run well in ovals. He's qualified better on road and street courses this year. The finishing results aren't necessarily there a lot of times because he's had so many mechanical issues.
Yeah,
which I'm not going to blame on him. But I mean, is he getting you a finishing position better than 12th in points, which is where Rosenqvist is at right now? I don't think so.
Yeah, I just feel like.
And again, I get it. McLaren is going from Alex Palou and having that in their lineup to scrambling. But if this is where they're going, I guess I'm just surprised because a lot of people, I mean, I thought David Malukas was a good fit for the 4th Andretti. But I mean, if McLaren still has the sponsorship and that ride's ready to go, they just need a driver. Obviously, the salary will save them a ton of money. And then they'll probably get money back from Palou with the lawsuit.
Right.
I don't know, I'm honestly surprised.
I don't know. I just look at McLaren as with the expectations that they put on themselves and try to portray them as this elite organization. Aren't you hiring somebody a little bit more proven than David Malukas?
You look at McLaren this year, 1 pole across 3 drivers, no race wins, only 1 driver in the top 5 of the championship in Pato Award. You have Rossi in 9th and Rosenqvist in 12th. I mean, if the Rahal team hadn't struggled the first 5-6 races of the year, I mean, the Rahal team has outperformed McLaren.
Yeah.
Far and away. I mean, 4 poles, a race win.
Yep.
Lundgaard's 8th in points.
Who would have thought that in May?
I get that Pato's a championship contender and he's got a lot of podiums this year. But beyond that, I mean, the rest of the lineup is it's fine, but it's not a lineup like Penske or Ganassi.
Correction.
And it's in compared to Rahal and Andretti. I mean, maybe the top end driver in Pato is better than anything Rahal or Andretti have. But beyond that,
right?
Is it really that different?
The correction for you is Pato is not a championship contender. There are only 2 teams that compete for championships in this series.
Is a fringe championship contender.
He is a guy that can run at the
top
front.
5. He's a top 5 championship finisher.
There you go. He can finish in the top 5 in points. There's only 2 teams capable of winning championships in this series. We will continue to say it, and definitely McLaren's not even close to cracking through. We thought maybe coming into this season, is this the year? No, it was not. In fact, it was worse than everybody expected.
And then the other note on silly season is that HMD Motorsports set to split with Dale Coyne Racing. This is not a surprise. I mean, with David Malukas leaving, I think this was always going to happen. Now, as far as their future in IndyCar, they're not there yet.
Could they be? I know there's a lot of talk about the satellite team for McLaren being Juncos. Is there a scenario where at some point down the line in the next year or 2 where HMD is the satellite program for the junior program, so to speak, for McLaren?
Potentially. I mean, they're working on their new headquarters in Brownsburg, getting everything ready. They have they're running like 1 million lights cars every year. Their goal is still to be in the IndyCar series, but they'll continue to operate in lights. And the dream again is to get to IndyCar. I think it'll happen. I just don't think they're ready yet.
I appreciate HMD for not jumping into it when other teams would, because you say, okay, we're in pretty solid ground with Indy Lights. David Malukas is actually in the series, the son of the owner of HMD. So it would make sense for them to have some sort of relationship at the very least with a team, or even have their own team in IndyCar because David Malukas is in the series, right? But they are being sensible in their approach, knowing that they don't want to be a team that jumps into the series just to be in the series and be a backmarker. And even they had a good comment too, like they quoted somebody, and it may have been David's
Mike
dad.
Marini, the general manager of HMD,
basically said they want to be a middle of the road team.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was going to get to, as far as they want to be mid-pack. They want to beat the lower level teams. He said they want to build their own pipeline, be able to take drivers from lights to IndyCar and provide them with a high level program. And then they're okay if drivers get picked up by Ganassi and McLaren and Penske or an Andretti. He said we're not going to hold anybody back, but that's their goal. I think that's the right process to go about it.
I agree. It's so refreshing to hear somebody involved with a new team or something to have realistic expectations, because you hear so much about, we're not joining IndyCar just to run around. We want to compete for race wins and championships. And I know HMD wants to compete for race wins, but they know they're not going to be Penske or Ganassi and compete for titles. They want to be a middle of the pack team that can compete, knock off a fair amount of teams below them, and maybe every couple years get a race win. It's refreshing to have realistic expectations from a team.
All right, let's preview the final race of the year, the Firestone Grand Prix of Monterey, coming up this weekend at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. Taking a look at the schedule for the weekend. So again, all these times will be Eastern, even though it's a Pacific time zone race. Practice 1, 5:30 to 6:45 on Friday evening. And then practice 2 on Saturday, 1 to 2 Eastern. Again, Peacock, IndyCar Live, SiriusXM, IndyCar Radio, all the usual outlets. Qualifying 5 to 6:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Warm up on Sunday, noon to 12:30. And then the TV broadcast window, 2:30 to 6 on NBC, also on Universo, along with Peacock, as far as for your viewing. Now, the pre-race is quite long. The actual green flag time is approximately 3:19.
And broadcast starts at 2:30. What are they going to talk about for 49 minutes?
I don't know.
When the championship has been decided.
Hopefully 45 minutes of leader circle.
I was going to say, can they break down the leader circle?
That's what I want to see.
But seriously, what are you going to discuss for that long?
I don't know.
Oh, maybe they can front load the commercials during the pre-race.
Commercial free.
Is it really? No.
No. I'm just saying.
That'd be terrible.
What if they did that?
Wouldn't that be terrible? What are they possibly going to talk about for that long? With no championship to discuss? Are they going to talk 30 minutes about the track record and the resurfacing at Laguna Seca and the pass? Can we see that again?
Yeah.
Can we see the corkscrew pass, please?
Yeah.
Because there's no recent highlights.
We'll see it again, I'm sure.
It's like, it's funny because I look at it kind of like when Formula One does their track preview during the formation lap and they're showing highlights from they'll show a highlight from 2021 about this turn, and then they'll go back to 1998 to show this turn. It's 25 years ago. You don't have a better highlight from turn 5 than that. That's kind of where we're at with Laguna Seca. Can you show me something exciting that's happened? I don't know, in the last quarter century at this track.
Yeah, right.
Please.
I mean, we're what, that was 96, right?
Yeah, it's almost 30 years.
Yeah, it's.
Can we find something else?
Fascinating.
I'm telling you, and we will see it. Multiple times on those broadcasts, maybe even multiple times in the pre-race because it's so damn long.
All right, 3 key stats from Chad 200, 20 and 25 races, won from the front row. Remember, no one's won a race this year from outside the front row, so keep that in mind. Will Power, 2 podiums, a pole, no wins, facing first winless season since 2006. Colton Herta won his first 2 races from pole position, leading 174 of the 185 laps. Now, he did that ride swap with his dad and his dad's 98 Rahal car that won the race, the Rahal Ford that won the race in 98 for Herta between his dad. So they did that ride swap earlier this week leading up to this event. Very cool stuff. Colton Herta in the throwback livery this weekend. Hopefully things go well for Colton because he's also facing a winless season.
Well, and circling back to the race on Sunday and hearing Colton Herta complain about needing to get off tires and then speeding in pit lane. When we talk about Scott Dixon being Scott Dixon, when's the last time you heard Scott Dixon come over the race and complain about, I don't care what the strategy is, I need to get off these tires ASAP? I'm not going to say the last time Scott Dixon had a speeding penalty because we know when that was.
Yeah, and when he complained on the radio, which was literally this last weekend, complaining about the Felix, the no throw caution to help Felix out.
Right, but I'm saying this is the difference between, this is why I look at Colton Herta as not being a dude that has lived up to expectations over the last couple years, is because you're looking at a guy that is constantly complaining. He wants to change the strategy because when they ask him to do something, no, I can't be on these tires for 5 more laps. No, I can't do this fuel number, blah, blah, blah. I need to come in now. This time, this isn't going to work. We need to do this. You never hear that out of Scott Dixon. He is told a number and he will get it. He is told we need this many laps on these tires and he will get them. And that's the difference between right now, one of the many differences between Scott Dixon and Colton Herta. And while he is still young, Colton Herta, man, it's amazing what a year plus can do to change your opinion of somebody. I mean, Colton Herta he's going to be a fast track to Formula One. Once this Andretti team gets off the ground, it's going to be Colton Herta in Formula One. Even Michael Andretti, if tomorrow he is approved to have an 11th team in Formula One.
The FIA is expected to grant Andretti an F1 license.
Well,
then
unfortunately,
up to F1.
the 10 teams will veto it.
So,
but I'm saying even Michael Andretti has to be having second thoughts right now. If tomorrow he's approved for an F1 team, Colton Herta being in one of those 2 spots in those 2 seats, I'm not sold on it.
9 drivers beat Elio's track record in the open test that they had. Will Power was the fastest in the open test, a 107.2 to put it in perspective. This is a lot faster than what they did last year as far as speed wise. So we'll have a track record. Will we have a good race? We shall see. Who's your winner pick?
Oh, who's my winner pick? At this point, I think it's like an explanation point for Alex Palou, and he wins this race.
I'll take a risk and go with Colton Herta. We'll see.
All right. Have fun with that.
If you agree or disagree with us, and I'm sure there is plenty to disagree with from our discussion on Portland, silly season, and more. Let us know. You can reach us, newtrackrecordpodcast.com. While you're there, sign up for the email list. It is free. You'll never miss an episode or any special announcements. Plus, we have t-shirts and stickers for sale in the store. You can also reach us on social media, IndyCar Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. On Facebook, just search for New Track Record. You can email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/newtrackrecord. Thanks to Xavier, Rob, and others for their support. Again, just starting at $1 a month. And as always, you can download each episode for free on your favorite podcasting platform, Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, Overcast, CastBox, wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, all for free. Mailbag time, Justin. Plenty to dive into this week, as always.
What do we got?
So let's start off with some silly season debate and whatnot from where things have stood. We'll start with this entry. Actually, no, this is not silly season, so my apologies. This from Jay Blasteri. Having a caution to clean up the marbles would make the racing service 1, safer, 2, better green flag racing, 3, bunch up the field. That from talking about, stage lengths and what NASCAR does. I mean, it helps.
Yeah, people will say it's, here's the thing. They'll say, it's contrived racing, blah, blah, blah. So is keeping the pits open before throwing a caution.
True.
After an incident.
This from Poet Shevchenko, talking about last week. Listening to this week's podcast, obviously talking about last week, your flub about Lundqvist and Lundgaard reinforces the imperative for Paul Tracy to come back to the booth so we can witness the perfect fusion of Lundgaard, Lundqvist, Blomqvist, and Rosenqvist into the ultimate name. That is true. That is...
And they should all be on the same team.
Unlimited Slip DF gave a prediction for Portland. Exiting the first chicane on lap 1, Dixon's car is struck by a basketball-sized meteor and is vaporized into a million pieces on lap 91. Having been on fuel save run, the cloud of number 9 parts, takes the lead and never gives it up.
My call would probably have a strategy for that.
Yeah, it would probably work out fine, right? I mean...
Don't worry, Scott, we're ready for this.
Yeah, they'll find a way to figure it out. This from Jeremy from HBG. Our Rate the Race is going to be spicy. Yeah, no doubt. In fact, let's dive into Rate the Race. What would you give this race?
I would give it a 5.5.
Wow, generous. I'm going a 5.
My initial thought was a 3, but I was like, oh, it was IndyCar racing, I guess, but not a lot happened.
I want this race to succeed. I'm getting a little nervous about its future. I'm not going to lie. They finally got a title sponsor. The crowd didn't look great. The racing. Here's the thing, though. Racing in person versus racing on TV are two completely different things.
Yes. So
you see things in person that make it exciting because you're not focused on following the leader or the top 5 the whole time. You get a bigger perspective.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it.
The thing is with Portland is people are going to races at Portland, Formula E races, but they're not going to IndyCar races at least as much as Formula E. Why? Why is that? And
I mean, part of it's having an international series versus a North American-based series.
Right, but this is supposed to be a hotbed of IndyCar. That's why they were pushing for a race in the Pacific Northwest for so long. That's why we keep hearing people, well, IndyCar needs to be in the Northeast somewhere. I mean, do they? Do they really? Because has IndyCar taken such a significant step forward with the race in Portland after people were clamoring that there was an untapped market and IndyCar needed to be there because Formula E has come in and been able to steal that momentum? Was this the first year for Formula E? Was there some sort of novelty with it at least, I guess?
Yeah, first year.
So we'll see if that wears off, but it's not like Portland is a track where you're going, well, not many people are showing up. They're just not showing up for IndyCar. It's the Watkins-Glen syndrome. Watkins-Glen has no problem putting butts in the seats and campers on their campus for NASCAR. Nobody was showing up for IndyCar. So I hope upon hope that they figure it out at Portland. I don't think it's on life support because I don't think it was a pathetic crowd. It wasn't Sonoma.
No.
But it's just the atmosphere is lacking. The event is lacking. The racing is lacking. Add it all up and it's kind of a meh event overall.
In fact, that leads perfectly into our first Rate the Race rating. A 3 meh from I Am Analog. Audi F1 engines gave it a 7. Restarts after full course yellows were tasty. It was a good to watch VK putting in a good performance. Yeah, we didn't really talk about him. He had a good run. Jeremy from HBG just said permission to rant. We said yes, didn't get a reply though. Transocean Trojan gave it a 5.5, so they agree with you. Daniel SEM 2004 6. The race was fine. The blatant misses by race control was a joke. NK Harden gave it a 3. Worst race of the season. Out of the first round of pit stops, the drama was over. Never even a question Palou would lock up the championship this weekend. Not really even a doubt that he would win the race after he took the lead. Get ready for Laguna to struggle to draw 350,000 viewers.
Oh man, it's
a lot of positivity.
We've talked about it at the beginning of the podcast. You need more than meh events to cap your season.
Yes.
And in recent years, there have been meh events over the final couple events of IndyCar season.
Jamin T14 gave it a 5. It was an IndyCar race. That is correct. That is factually accurate.
There was every car started the race. One car finished before any other car to win the race.
A checkered flag was thrown.
Yes, a checkered flag was thrown.
Along with green flags and yellow flags.
Mm-hmm. It was an IndyCar race in all those respects. But anything after that, it was a lot of misses.
M. Vanny gave it a 7. Not the most exciting race, but there were high points. Jay Blasteri gave it a 6. CGR and Palou have dominated this year from the first race in a series that is incredibly difficult to dominate. Hats off to CGR and Palou. What an organization. Yeah, I mean, if you're a Ganassi fan or just appreciate what they've done, absolutely. No doubt. They have found something that other teams have not this year between Dixon and Palou. Other comments, this on Grosjean. Bauer Racing King, I was really hoping he wouldn't be back to Grosjean everything up. People are funny and brutal at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
This is the rant from Jeremy from HBG, so my apologies. I truly believe that race control is worse than when the great Brian Barnhart was canned, where we had the unintended consequences line from TGBB. The current guys are doing exactly what they are intending to do, try to be safe and fair, yet achieving the exact opposite. Before that, the racing was a 7. Officiating was a big steaming pile of number 2. I did not understand how the stewards did not even review the Palou block on Elio. Add it to the delayed full course yellow, it was a bad day. So that was the precursor to the secondary comment. No disagreement there with anything. Could not agree more.
I firmly believe that to rectify the race steward situation is your race stewards need to be cryogenically frozen, and they are thawed out before each event, and they have no interaction with the teams and drivers and all that. They are just thrust into that role. They don't know anything about the standings, which drivers are leading the standings, whatever. And then after the race, they are then frozen again until the next race.
That way they can't be influenced in any way.
But I mean, it's almost like they need to be treated like a jury, to where they know they are not dictated by any outside influence or whatever. They are just judging the case on its merits and what they're presented. They don't know
they would
anything.
be sequestered.
They would be sequestered, yes. Or cryogenically frozen. I'm open to whatever works. But I'm saying the race stewards need to be in that respect. They need to know nothing of what's going on and forced to judge the race individually on its own merits.
Yeah, I mean, whatever works, right? This poll I posted, who is most likely not racing full-time in IndyCar in 2024? Nearly 38% of you said Stingray Robb, 37% said Grosjean, nearly 17% said Peterson, and nearly 9% said Santino Ferrucci. NK Harden saying, no way Robb comes back. He hasn't shown anything. I mean, he's struggled, but when you come with funding, you come with funding. B. Frank 2511 said, highest probability has to be Romain Grosjean. Peterson is under contract, only leaves if he and the team both agree. Robb is reported to have big budget, and Santino, if not saying it, Foyt, has proven enough of himself to land a ride somewhere. Zach _Dowdell said, wouldn't be surprised if Grosjean focuses on his Lamborghini LMDH program over spending another uncompetitive season in IndyCar. And Jay Blasteri, it's a shame if Santino isn't back full time. So I voted Ferrucci in this poll. only because he is the driver compared to the others who is least likely to get a ride because he doesn't bring a big budget, and he's not Romain Grosjean, who people will want even though, because of the potential, even though it feels still untapped.
Yeah, completely agree.
Now, Rob will be back if a team wants his budget. We expect Devlin DeFrancesco, we've mentioned this numerous times, to be one of the contenders at Coyne. I mean, Stingray Rob could be back at Coyne, with bringing a budget. Peterson at Foyt. Yes, he has a multi-year deal, but we know how contracts work. There's a bidding war going on for the Foyt seats now because of the Penske partnership. Let's not kid ourselves.
That changes things because Penske's now going to have a say in who are in those seats. Let's make no mistake.
So that's something to keep in mind. And then someone saying he has a budget, though. I think Grosjean will be back. That was Transocean Trojan talking about Stingray Rob. Yeah, when you come with funding, you come with possibilities.
More doors open than otherwise would.
As far as some other notes, so the schedule news, international race alert. Here we go.
Ooh.
We'll get to it right now. This from Adam Stern. Mark Miles, IndyCar CEO, says that based off current interest, he can probably imagine an international non-points race in Latin America, probably Argentina next year at the end of the calendar year. Also, talking to a promoter interested in a new race on the U.S. East Coast. Transocean Trojan replying saying, non-points race, LOL. Yeah, that's
unfortunate.
It's unfortunate. Also, Jay Blasteri saying more IndyCar is good, non-points race, if only for a year to measure the interest and to make sure some coin. Understand doesn't mean we have to like it, but understand. Hunter's Way 67 saying, I'm more interested in the East Coast race than a non-points international race. Yeah, where would that... The key phrase is new race on the U.S. East Coast. Where would that be?
Still say Richmond.
I mean...
Where else?
Is that really a new race? I mean, I guess it would count.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, that's my best guess. Richmond or Pocono?
I don't see Pocono coming back this
Jeff
soon.
Cerneski saying, more races are always good. When did Cleveland become an East Coast city? I think it just did.
When did Michigan become an East Coast city?
I think it also just did.
It is on the east coast of Michigan.
It's on the east coast. I mean, it's east of the gateway to the west, which is St. Louis. That's good enough for me.
I just fear with the Northeast, it sounds great. But you look at the Pacific Northwest and everybody said IndyCar needed to be there. And you're just kind of like, Portland. Okay. It's there. It's very much, in my opinion, a schedule filler. Oh, it's cool. We're going to, is it cool we're going to Portland, or is it cool that we have a 17th race or a race to get to 17 or whatever on the schedule?
It'd be cooler if we didn't have 2 IMS road course races, but that's just me.
Right. But I'm saying, like, it's cool that IndyCar goes to Nashville, right? It's cool that IndyCar goes to Long Beach. It's cool that IndyCar goes to, in my opinion, Iowa. I think it's a great race. Is it cool that IndyCar goes to Portland? No. Or is it cool that Portland is on the schedule that helps it get to 17 races every year? That's kind of how I look at it.
That wraps up the mailbag. Time for news and notes and a few things to get to. So we talked about the race options. We didn't get to Milwaukee, very likely to be added to the 2024 IndyCar schedule, according to Mark Miles. Also declined to confirm expectation that NASCAR will switch back to competing on the IMS Oval next year. And again, the Milwaukee news, not a big deal. Also, this from Adam Stern, IndyCar starting later this year to begin talks with media networks and streaming companies about its next TV deal that will start in 2025. It's hired Endeavor's IMG Media division to consult. All options on the table, according to Mark Miles.
CW on line 1.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. If they can keep the NBC deal as close to what they have currently, consider that a win.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they'll be able to pull that off.
The fact that they've had this many network races for this long is very, very surprising.
It's been very helpful for ratings.
It doesn't hurt when you're trying to say most watched season in 15 years.
Yes. Nathan Brown posting this clarification on a question I've gotten a lot leading into this weekend, since this is typically the hopeful target for next year's scheduled release. We won't have the 2024 calendar until a little bit into this offseason, uncertain of exactly what timeline we're working on. So does that mean end of September? Does it mean October?
I am fine with as long as it takes to
Gives
get
us-
Milwaukee shored up, Argentina, whatever.
Yes.
Take as long as you need.
I'm hopeful with all of that. Other notes, Andretti is rebranded to Andretti Global, and they will be Andretti Global for the 2024 IndyCar season.
Well, that'll be something we continue to screw up.
Yeah.
It'll
right?
be Andretti Autosport for this
Yes.
podcast for a while. Andretti Global, what's next? Like Andretti
Universe?
Solar System? I think you go Solar System
Solar
first.
System.
Then
Andretti
Universe.
Milky Way.
Andretti Galaxy.
Yeah. I mean, if they can find a way to race on other planets, they could at least be Solar System.
Well, what happens first? Are they racing on Mars or racing in Formula One?
Ooh. That's a tough question. Let's save that for an off-season episode.
We'll have Michael Andretti on the show. Be a coup to get him on the podcast, and then I'll hit him with that question first, and he'll immediately hang up.
Hopefully he'll realize it's a joke, but that's highly unlikely in that
if
situation.
you listen to this podcast, he'd know, but chances are Michael Andretti has better things to do.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. An interesting notes from the racer mailbag from Marshall Pruitt. So I mentioned Grosjean received interest from 3 teams. Chance he won't have a seat next year. The hostilities between himself and the timing stand is not really helping as far as him getting hired. And then also a note that Marshall had as far as the hybrid unit. So they've been running tests. But Marshall says Mahle, M-A-H-L-E, was not going to be able to deliver its proposed system on time. And so they had to undergo changes once again for 2024. The plan shelved the 2.4 liter engines, took those budgets, applied them to designing and creating a new ERS solution with the 2 engine partners working together on the project. So Team Chevy and Ilmor working with a different European vendor to make the motor generator unit, and HPD is working with another European vendor to make these supercapacitors. So it says look for more details on that in the near future on racer.com.
All very exciting stuff. Just have them ready to go for next year. We just have that, please.
I don't really understand a whole lot beyond that. Adam Stern reporting that IMS will have a new company serving concessions starting next year. Aramark beating out the incumbent Levy Restaurants. Sources said 80% of IMS business is conducted during the iconic Indy 500. This was not during the Indy 500, but I bought food at IMS for the second road course race for IndyCar. And I'm like, okay, I'll just get chicken tenders and fries. And it was like, I don't know, $12, like not terrible.
Okay.
All right. And I get the fries and they're like tiny shoestring fries. And the chicken tenders had to be the like stack 2 chicken McNuggets on top of each other. They're essentially that size. They were tiny. So I was very disappointed. I thought, well, you can't do worse than what you have right now.
You threw it back in their face.
No, I ate it.
Do you know who I am?
I ate it.
I host a podcast. I'm going to bury you.
No, I ate it because that was my sad lunch that day. So hopefully it's better than the current offering. IndyCar has a special celebration for the season champions Thursday, September 21st at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So that is the banquet for this year. And there's a lot of back and forth between David Malukas and Scott McLaughlin over their tussle at Gateway. Malukas saying, I thought he called me a beast, but I guess that wasn't what he said. And he unfollowed me on everything.
Ooh.
Man, nothing like some social media spats for
That's
IndyCar.
when it gets real.
Yes. And that transitions. One more note. The Heartland Film Festival will be showing the Lionheart Dan Weldon movie, and that takes place October 5th through 15th in Indianapolis. So it'll open with the HBO and Time Studios documentary, The Lionheart, about Dan Weldon. So very, very cool. So again, tweets of the week. We just have one, and it is from Scott McLaughlin. FYI, lots of talk about beef and where I get it from. I get my beef from the best in the business, Good Ranchers, #Meatwagon, #Beefgate. Thought that was great branding. Good work on him. All right, time for our random split era driver of the week.
Before we get to the random split era driver of the week, we do have a championship on the line this weekend, Caleb.
Yes, our fantasy league. That's right.
Fantasy league. Only less than 10 points separate. First place, I thought you had the keys.
Okay.
And second place, Stux Racing.
Okay.
Stux Racing is 9.5 points behind. I thought you had the keys. They're the only real 2 teams that have a chance here. And we will be following this. Maybe that's what will be previewed in that 50-minute pre-race, is how we got here between the championship race between those two teams. But we will have the championship winner on at some point, and maybe we can get some live updates too on the broadcast on Sunday on who's going to win this thing.
So I am overall in 26th place.
I stopped picking.
I've had top 10 results the last 3 races. The problem is I forgot to pick, I think, 2 races earlier this year. That
was my problem. I missed one, then missed another. And then I
missed
okay,
2.
I'm screwed.
So that really hurt me. I want to say I missed Road America. No, I was 15th. So I must have missed Mid-Ohio. I definitely missed Mid-Ohio. I'm pretty sure I did. And then I missed one other race. It may have been one of the Iowa races or something, but I've closed the season strong, just, not done anything.
You're building momentum for 2024, similar to Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan.
Yeah, one could say that. That's being quite generous.
All right, so we'll keep an eye on that. But random split era drive of the week, we're going to Champ Car 2004 and Guy James Mutlow Smith.
Who?
Or Guy Smith.
First off, there's a Smith who raced an IndyCar event. Now, not in the Indy 500, because we never had a Smith surname in the Indy 500. But this is fascinating.
Guy Smith, who he raced the second half of the 2004 season with Rocket Sports.
No, the infamous Rocket Sports.
And had 2 top 10s, one at Laguna Seca, one at Surfers Paradise. Overall raced in, 7 races, finished 18th in points. Did a couple seasons in Indy Lights, 1998 with Johansson Motorsports, 1999 with Forsyth. Actually won 2 races in 1998 in Indy Lights, but then didn't come back around and do Champ Car until 2004. Did several years at Le Mans in the early 2000s and the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, which he has competed in recent years with United Motorsports. But Guy Smith,
Zach Brown's team, United Autosports.
Yes, is from Britain, has been an English teacher and coordinator in Brazil, has competed in various levels of motorsport. He is 48 years old, so he was very young when he was in Indy Lights and Rocket Sports in 2004. That was about it. Raced for Rocket Sports, drove a Lola Ford in 7 races, 9th at Laguna Seca, 9th at Surfers were his best finishes. Also had a 10th at Road America in 2004. And then that was it. Just a half season with Rocket Sports and then was done. Mr. Guy Smith. So this week's random split era driver of the week, the fertile ground that is kart and Champ Car, provides us another doozy, Mr. Guy Smith.
Mimo Gidley was in that car for a couple of races. Nelson Philippe started out the year in that car. Then Alex Tagliani was the other driver for that team. But I mean, you look at some of the you have Paul Tracy, Patrick Carpentier, Sebastian Bourdais, Bruno Junqueira, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Mario Dominguez. And then you start getting in Tagliani, Michel Jourdain Jr., AJ Allmendinger, and Vassar. And then you start getting into a lot of random split air drivers of the week. Tarso Marquez did a couple, Oriol Servia, Justin Wilson also raced that year, but fascinating stuff. Guy Smith, this week's random split air driver of the week. That wraps up this week's episode. For Justin Kinney, I am Caleb Hatch. We will be back next week to recap the IndyCar season finale at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. Thanks for joining us on New Track Record Podcast.
Podcasts by Federated Media.